have to look. Okay, so also I should let you know we are going to be recording this. So I hope no one has a problem with that. So we're going to record this. So the tofu is now in the oven. And that's just going to be in the oven for about 10 minutes. And I toss that with the garlic and the ginger, some curry powder, some salt, and that's just going to cook for 10 minutes while we get started with the other things. Okay, I'm going to sit my garlic and ginger over here. I'm going to move my wine over here so I don't spill it. So the first thing I want to get set up right now is the ingredients for my rice. All right, as I mentioned in my last cooking class, rice absorbs a lot of arsenic from the soil. Organic basmati rice from India has less rice than rice actually grown in the States. But nevertheless, what's that?
Less arsenic, not less rice.
Arsenic. Less arsenic in it than rice grown in the States. But it still has arsenic. Plus, basmati rice has a powdery coating on it that you want to rinse off anyway. So you want to measure 2 cups of basmati rice. This is organic white basmati rice. And something interesting also as far as the arsenic goes, for some reason the white rice doesn't have as much arsenic as brown rice. You can also use organic brown basmati rice, but brown rice, because of the bran, the whole outside of the rice, it has more arsenic in it. So anyway, I normally eat brown rice anyway because it also is more nutritious. So everything in our food system is a balancing act, and that's something that you will become more and more familiar with the more you become informed about what is in our food and our food system. And so that's why, you know, when people say you don't want too much soy, you don't want too much of this, you don't want too much of that, it's all balancing. Too much of anything is going to cause problems. So you really want to try to balance things out. So I'm going to put my basmati rice over there. I'm going to go over to the sink for a minute, and I'm pulling out my sieve, and I am going to rinse this basmati rice underwater. And while I'm rinsing it underwater, I'm going to be rubbing it with my hands to try to wash off as much of the arsenic and that white powder as possible. So just give me a minute. Oh.
So you're not the speaker.
I'm just washing the rice here. And you can keep washing the rice until you see the water come out clear. When you first start running the water over the basmati rice, the water's coming out kind of cloudy from all that powdery dust. And then the water starts clearing up. You're just going to shake it and get as much of the water out as possible. I'm going to put a towel under it while I bring it back over here. And just going to let this drain a little bit right here into this bowl. I'm going to cut an onion for the rice. And I'm going to dice the onion. And you'll see as we go through the evening, there's a couple different ways of cutting onions depending on what you're doing with it. So I'm going to start by cutting the ends off of my onion here. I'm going to cut it in half. I'm going to take the skin off. Lay it flat. Take the other skin off. And so for this recipe, I'm dicing the onion. For the Mattar Pannir, I'll also be dicing, and I'll show you a different way of dicing when we get to that one. And then for the vegetable curry, I'm actually going to cut the onions into slivers, and I'll show you that as well. I'm just going to get rid of these onion peels and put them right over here into my compost bin. I showed you last week, and I'll show you again. This is my compost bin, and everything from my vegetables goes into this compost bin, and every day I take it out to my outdoor compost. And then when that gets full, I mix it in with leaves and everything and layer it and let that sit for a while. Okay, so I want to dice this onion. So I have two halves here lying flat so that they won't move around. I'm going to cut the onion 1, 2, 3, 4. And depending on the size of the onion will depend on how many slices across you want to do. And then you're going to hold all of these together with your knife. Just go up and down. And you're going to have perfectly diced onions. And do the same thing for the other side. Okay, then you're going to turn it. And again, up and down. You want to keep your fingers away from the knife. So you're going to actually tip your fingers like this, that your knuckle is the guide, almost like a template. And you keep moving your knuckle back while you're holding the pieces of onion. And then when you get to the last bit, you flip it over and you cut that. And so I have beautifully cut onions here. The recipe calls for 1 cup of onions. So I'm going to measure this. I bet I have more than 1 cup here. But a little extra onion in the rice does not hurt. We want a little oil in the bottom of the pan. So as I said, I'm not using ghee, so this is coconut oil. The recipe calls for 6 tablespoons of coconut oil, which is quite a bit, but that's how much it called for the ghee. But I use a little bit less, so it's not as oily. I'm going to take 1 more tablespoon. So I'm putting in probably about half, like 3 tablespoons maybe.
And how much ghee would you use?
Well, the recipe again calls for 6 tablespoons, but because I'm trying to use less oil, I cut it in half and do 3.
Sorry, got it. Okay.
So I'm going to just use this whole onion, just because it's here. So I have maybe a cup and a half of onion. And again, all my recipes are very flexible. You know, I usually, when I cook, I'm not even using a recipe. I create the recipes so I can share it with you. But feel free to add a little more onion if you have. You know, onions are just different sizes. So sometimes they're big, sometimes they're small. But in with the onion, you are going to saute some cinnamon stick. And here's a bag of cinnamon stick. It calls for 1 2-inch piece. But these are not full sticks. These are kind of like just the bark peeled off, so and it's not rolled. So I'm going to put a few pieces in. Okay, and it also calls for some whole cloves. And it calls for 4 whole cloves. So you're going to put 4 whole cloves in. If you like the flavor of cloves, feel free to put in 6 cloves. That's fine too. So I'm going to drop these cinnamon stick and a clove in. And I'm going to put my onions in. You can hear the sizzle. You always want to let the oil get warm enough so that when you add the onions, you hear a sizzle. You don't want to put anything in for sauteing into cold oil. Otherwise it won't sear. Okay, so we're going to let that start getting soft. It also calls for cardamom pods. Now, cardamom pods, if you bite into a cardamom pod, it's really an unpleasant flavor. So I have stopped using cardamom pods. These are cardamom pods. And instead I'm using ground cardamom. So if you look at the recipe, it says, I don't know how many cardamom pods it says, but it also says a 1/4 teaspoon of cardamom. And we'll be adding a 1/4 teaspoon of cardamom. These are cardamom pods. Can you see these? And when you cook them, if you bite into one, I can't get it higher. See that? If you bite into one when you're eating the rice, it really can ruin your whole dinner. So I've stopped doing that. Where the cloves and the cinnamon stick are easy to see and you just pick those out, but the cardamom pods are a little bit trickier. So I'm just going to saute these onions. And in with this, we're going to saute the rice. But I'm going to wait for the onions to get going a little bit. So while that's going, we're going to start preparing for the Mattar Pannir. Okay, so We need another onion for that. And as I said, I'm going to show you how to cut this onion, also diced, but another way, just so you have a variety of ways to cut diced onions. And you may have seen this before, where you actually keep the onion whole. Again, you peel the skin off of the onion. And this onion's a little smaller than the last one, so it's a little trickier in this method. But what you're going to do is you're going to score the onion. You're not going to go all the way down, but you're going to score the top in one direction, turn the onion, and score it again. So you've now made a checkerboard of slices 3/4 way down the onion. And then if you just hold the onion, again with your knuckles back, or your fingers back, and your knuckle is the guide, you're just going to slice. And it instantly comes out as a beautiful dice. And then when you get to the last part that you did not go all the way through, you can just do it like that, turn them all, and do it again, and have another dice. So that's another way of dicing an onion.
So that's just a different technique?
A different technique of also getting the same result, another dice. And you can, guide how fine you want to dice it with this way or either way. And of course, if you need something diced more, you just hold the end of the tip of the knife down and go up and down. But I don't want to do that for this, so I'm just going to put this now into this little measuring cup here. Let it sit here for a bit. Get rid of these skins again. Into my compost. Okay, let's see. So the onions are starting to get translucent. This is how they're getting. Okay, so I'm going to add the rice now to this. So I have my rice right here that I've washed. I'm going to add that in. And I'm also going to lower the temperature on this just a little bit because I don't want the rice to burn. I'm going to boil some water. I have this electric tea kettle, which is great. If you guys don't have one, I really recommend it. It's an incentive to drinking tea all the time. And you want to boil some water because we're actually going to let the saffron soak a little bit in the boiling water before we add it to the rice. So we put in 2 cups of rice, so we're going to need 4 cups of water. You need a teaspoon of the saffron threads. So we'll just take out a teaspoon of the saffron threads. And if you could smell it, just opening the bag, you can smell it. It's so great. I'm going to put a teaspoon of saffron right into the measuring cup. Close this back up. When the water boils, I'm going to add 2 cups to this. Like I said, I need 4 cups, so I'm going to fill this twice, but I do 2 cups first, and then the second 2 cups gets the rest of the saffron that's around the edges, and that way I don't waste any of the saffron flavor. Okay, I'm just going to sit that there, give my rice another stir. Let me check on the tofu. Show you how the tofu's looking. Whoops. To stabilize the parchment paper, sometimes I'll spray a little bit of oil right onto the cookie sheet before putting the parchment paper down, and that will keep the paper from sliding. But anyway, I'm just going to give the tofu a little stir, and it's looking good already. This tofu, one of the things with tofu, and many of you may have heard this actually as a complaint. People say tofu has no flavor. And it really doesn't. But the beauty of it is that it will take on any flavor you give it. So this is really enough. This is ready. So I'm going to take this out.
Bhavani, sorry, what temperature was your oven at?
I roasted it at 375.
Thank you.
I'm going to turn the oven off because I don't need it anymore. I'm going to just sit this over here on the side out of my way until I need it. And I realized my cutting board might be a little bit bigger than most of yours because I have a commercial size oven here. Okay, so in with the rice, let's just get all the spices together in there. We have the cinnamon, we have the cloves, the onion, jaggery. Let me tell you about jaggery. Jaggery is a natural sugar. It's in its normal form. It can come in these cubes like this. They're hard, although they're not always this hard. This package has been around a while. So what I actually did, because it's so hard, is I took my box grater and I just grated the cubes right here on the side. And this sugar has the molasses still in it. So you can use brown sugar if you don't have jaggery, which most of you probably don't. And you can even add a tad of molasses to it for that flavor. So when I get the boiling water, I'm gonna put the jaggery right in there with the saffron as well. My water's boiling, so I'm going to put 2 cups right in here. I'm going to let that just sit while I'm sauteing my rice. And the rice, we want to just allow the rice, by doing this, by sauteing the rice, each kernel will stay individual when you cook it. It's not going to get mushy at all. Each kernel will really stay really beautiful. So this is what it's looking like. And I'm going to just continue letting that saute a little bit more. Okay, so we also are going to need salt, and it calls for, the original recipe that I had called for 2 teaspoons of salt. I cut it down to 1.5 teaspoons because my husband doesn't love a lot of salt, so I put a little less in, and then I usually add a little bit more in mine. So anyway, so 1.5 teaspoons of salt. You can put that right into that water there. And then I'm going to add the 1/4 teaspoon of the cardamom, since I did not put in, where's my cardamom? Oh, here it is. Since I didn't put in the cardamom pods, I'm going to do cardamom powder. So 1/4 teaspoon of that, and put that right into the water here too. And all that's going to go in with my rice in a moment. Okay, give that another stir. Okay, I'm going to add this water now. White rice takes a lot less time to cook than brown rice, so this only needs like 25 minutes. Adding another 2 cups of boiling water. You want to take the spoon, where's the spoon here? Take the spoon and just make sure all the rice that's up on the sides here is down in the water. I'm going to raise the temperature just for a moment to bring it back to a boil, lower it to a simmer, and turn and put the cover on that. And I'm going to be able to bit about that. Yes?
You should only add boiling water to the rice?
Add boiling water to the rice.
Also boiling, okay.
That cuts the time, and
Oh,
that way you're also able to first soak saffron, okay? So now we're going to move on to the matzo Pannir. Okay, we've cut the onion now. I'm going to add some coconut oil into the pan. You can do this either in a pot or a cast iron frying pan. I have my cast iron frying pan right here, so I'm going to use that. And I'm going to use my wok for the vegetables. So I'm going to put, sorry, sound, a tablespoon of coconut oil in here. See how much oil does it actually call for? It says 5 tablespoons. Again, you don't need as much as the original recipe calls for, but you're welcome to use that. I've been really trying to cut back on as much oil, so I put in a little bit less, and you can always add water if it's sticking. You don't need to use the oil. Okay, so I turn the heat on. I'm gonna let that coconut melt, and then I'll add the onions to that. In with the In with that is going to be the tofu, the frozen peas, and the cans of tomato. Now for cans of tomato, you have choices. It calls for 2 cans. So you can either use 2 small cans. That's what I was talking about. And I realized I didn't say 14 or 15 ounce cans. Or you can use 1 larger can. These are just diced in tomato juice. These are small, petite fire roasted ones, and these are regular fire roasted ones. And so it's up to you if you want the fire roasted flavor. That gives it a little of a deeper, earthier flavor with the fire roasted. Or you can use plain. That's really a choice on what you like. And then frozen peas. At Trader Joe's, I get the organic peas here. You can also use fresh peas, but at Whole Foods, they didn't have organic fresh peas. And people are always asking me, what's the difference whether you get local or organic, or, if you're going to get, for me, organic's really important. So I choose organic, but I do like it to be produced in this country because I don't totally trust when it's coming from somewhere else, although sometimes that's the best choice. But anyway, so I had a choice of these organic peas are from Trader Joe's. They're large size. At Whole Foods, they just had the little petite ones. And those are really nice to add to like a rice dish, but I didn't want that as my main dish for the Mattar Pannir. So these are the peas that I have. The oil is hot. I am going to add the onions. A little skin there. In with the onions, I'm going to add some of my spices. So it calls for ginger and garlic, which I have up here. Where's the spoon? Here we go. Teaspoon of garlic and ginger. I'll lower the heat a little bit. I have it on high. I'm going to lower it just a little bit. Again, if I'm going too fast or you have any questions, feel free to ask me to slow down, ask a question. I'm going to put salt in this, 1 teaspoon.
Can you just recap really quick what's in the pan so far?
Excuse me?
Can you just recap what you have in the pan so far?
So far in the pan, it's the coconut oil, then the 1 onion that's diced, along with a teaspoon of ginger and a teaspoon of garlic. Okay? Now I'm going to add a teaspoon of salt, a teaspoon of turmeric, and of course my teaspoon doesn't fit into this jar, so I have to do 2 half teaspoons. And when you roast the herbs first, or the spices first, it actually brings out some more of the flavor. So a lot of times you'll see in recipes, you're actually adding the spices directly into the frying pan before you're adding a lot of the vegetables. Okay, so the turmeric, then I'm going to add some cumin. And for the cumin, it's a 1/4 teaspoon. And a 1/4 teaspoon of coriander. And when we get to fresh coriander, it's really interesting. Chinese parsley, fresh coriander, and cilantro are all the same thing. And so a lot of times in recipes, people get confused because they're like, what is that? I thought I already, the recipe called for cilantro, but I thought somewhere else it said Chinese parsley. And so it's just interesting to know that Chinese parsley, cilantro, and fresh coriander are all the same thing. Okay. So now I'm going to wait to add the garam masala. Garam masala is the one spice that you don't roast first. You add that at the end. And that spice has like cloves and allspice in it. It's very aromatic. So that goes at the end. So now, in with these onions, I'm going to add the peas. It's still a little frozen here. I'm going to add 2 cans of fire roasted tomatoes. And I'm picking these cans because the top's open easy. No other reason.
Should we be straining the tomatoes? Or are they just going straight in?
Say that again?
Sorry, are we straining the tomatoes?
No, you want the sauce in there. The sauce
Thank
is,
you so much.
sauce is part of what you want because that's going to be making the gravy with the tofu. And the tofu is going to get added to this and get absorbed in here.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Get rid of these cans. I'm going to bring back the tofu now. And one of the beauties about cooking on parchment paper, you can just pick up the whole parchment paper and just dump it right in there like that. And the parchment paper too can go into the compost. Okay, so I'm going to mix this up. And this dish now, I'm just going to put a cover on it. And this is just going to simmer. And the tofu, like I said, the tofu does not have a lot of its own flavor, but the tofu is going to pick up all these spices that we just put in here. And I'm first going to add the garam masala that I mentioned. And here's garam masala. And like I said, it's an aromatic spices. So, you know, I don't know. See, it has cumin in it and coriander, cardamom, black pepper, cloves, cinnamon, and they're all organic in here. Okay, so I'm going to do a whole tablespoon of this garam masala. And this is, you know, one of the main flavors in this dish. And the last thing this dish is going to get, but I'm not going to add that right away, is the cilantro or the fresh coriander. And I'm just going to show you this, because I don't know if you can see how beautiful these colors are. And you saw how quick it came together. But just look, so pretty. So I'm going to put a cover, I'm going to move this to my back burner. I'll put a cover on this. I'm going to lower the temperature. I just want it to be a simmer. I'm going to cover that. Let that tofu just absorb that flavor. And at the end, and this goes for all recipes, you're going to use your taste. You're going to use your senses, and you're going to taste it, and you're going to add more salt if you think it needs more salt, more garam masala, more cumin. You're going to be the judge, and it's going to be according to what you like. And that's one of the beauties about cooking. It's really, you get to choose. Do you like it spicy? There's actually, in this recipe, there's nothing that's spicy. It doesn't have curry powder. There's nothing in there that's spicy. So the next dish has a little bit more spice to it. And again, so that would be your choice as to how much of the spice you want to put in. Okay, so let me just clean this a little bit, and then we're going to get started with the next recipe. Like I said, I'm going to need more garlic. So I know I've showed you this, those of you that were in my last 2 classes, but this is one of my favorite little devices in the kitchen. It's a little mini Braun mixer. And I buy my garlic, very often I cheat. I do get garlic cloves and I grow garlic, but very often when I'm doing a lot of cooking, it's just so nice to get already peeled clove garlics. I do not like pre-chopped garlic that's sitting in the oil. To me, that just doesn't taste the same. It has citric acid added to it, and it's just not as good. But this is really great. So I just take a handful of this garlic right into my little mini processor here. And I put the top on. I put this little handle, and this actually has attachments. It also has a whisk attachment. It has a emulsion blender, you know, so you can make cream soups with it. And you just go right into it and just pulse it. Immersion blender. Right, I said emulsion, immersion blender. Glad I have someone checking up on me. Okay, so you can see this just minces it so beautifully and so quickly. So I love this little device here. So I'm going to add this garlic. I know this, what's left in here was not going to be enough. And I keep this in my refrigerator for weeks at a time. And it lasts for a long time. And it's just great to have on hand. Okay.
Can you do the same thing with the ginger?
Yes, I do the same thing with the ginger. Yeah, and that's how I did the ginger, and that's also great. But the ginger, you know, you have to peel first, and you can either peel ginger using the spoon or a peeler or just a knife. It's up to you.
Do you store it straight or do you store it in olive oil?
Just store it straight. I don't store it in olive oil.
Bhavani, how do you avoid the strings in the ginger when you chop it? I chop it by hand.
Use that mini chopper. It chops those strings. You don't have that to deal with.
Right, and when I chop it by hand?
If you're grating the ginger, I mean, if I don't have the chopper, I will grate the ginger, you know, using this finer grater right here.
Right.
Okay, and then you'll end up with a piece of ginger left with lots of strings, and I usually just put that in the compost or save it for soups or something like that.
Oh,
But
soups, good idea.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You will have another sip of wine. Okay, so the last thing we're going to do, well, I'm going to lower this rice a little because I hear it boiling away. The last dish is the coconut curry. So I'm going to get out another onion. And for this recipe, I don't want the onion diced. I want the onion to be what we call slivers, or, you know, silver moons. So again, I'm going to cut it in half. I'm going to peel the skin off of this onion, lay it flat. Okay, and then while it's lying flat, just like before, you know, you're going to keep your knife down on the cutting board, and you're going to use your finger as a template, and my finger is going to be the guide. So as I cut, I'm going to be moving my finger backwards so that I don't cut my finger, and that I'm guiding how wide the slivers are going to be, because I don't want these slivers to be really fat. And then when you get to the end, you turn it over a little bit so you have more of the surface lying flat on the cutting board, and do it again. And you can see you have beautiful individual slivers like this. Next, I'm going to be doing an onion. I'm sorry, carrots. And how you cut carrots, you know, a few weeks ago when we did the Japanese stir fry, we cut the carrots into julienne strips. When I'm making a stew, which is basically what the vegetable curry is, I want the carrots to be more of a chunky shape than a julienne strip. So I'm going to show you how I cut those in a minute. Let me get my peeler. It only calls for 1 carrot. It's so hard for me. I tried cutting the recipe back so that we wouldn't have too much, because I know many of us are not having big dinner parties right now. So I'm really going to try to use just 1 carrot, which is very hard. So we're going to peel the carrot first. You don't have to peel the carrot, you know, honestly, so many nutrients are in the outer skin, but if you don't peel it, you need to really scrub it well. Visually, I like the color and the look of it when it's peeled. And for me, so much about cooking is how it looks. So I usually do peel it, but you can just scrub it clean, and that's fine as well. So for cutting the carrot, we want to cut it into chunks. So I'm going to rotate my carrot. My knife is staying stationary, and that's going up and down. But the carrot is turning a half a turn every time. So I'm getting these really nice chunks that have many different facets to them. And it makes a much more interesting cut than just, these rounds, this shape that you normally get in a stew. To me, is just really not very pleasant. This is much more pleasant to bite into. Mouthfeel is really important to me. And so this is a much better cut. So just keep turning the carrot. And as you get to the wider part of the carrot, you just make the cuts a little bit narrower so that their chunk stays relatively the same size. Okay, so here we go. That's a very little carrot, but we're gonna go with it. And we'll see how much we end up with, okay? So we're gonna start by, always when you stir frying anything or making a stew, you want the root vegetables to cook first. So that's my onions and my carrots. So I'm gonna turn, why is it going on? Hold on, I forget my lighter. This happens sometimes. What's that? No? I will. Okay. If my pilot goes out, I need to do an assist. Okay, so again, a little bit of coconut oil goes into here. And you can use any oil that you want. Just a couple tablespoons. I'm going to take a quick little peek in the back here at my, at my Mattar Pannir. Oh, it's looking really good. Giving this a stir. I'm going to lower that back temperature a little bit more, okay? Make sure that doesn't burn. All right, so my coconut oil is getting hot. I'm going to add the onions first. And again, you can hear the sizzle. So I know the onion was hot enough. The oil was hot enough. And I'm going to add the carrots right in with that because these are both root vegetables and we want these to get soft. Again, this is a stew in vegetable curry, unlike Japanese stir fry. Japanese stir fry, you want the vegetables to have a little bit of a crunch. In vegetable curry, you want the vegetables to be soft. So we want to get that going right there. Okay, so I'm going to add right in with this, my ginger and my garlic again. And so the recipe calls for how much ginger and garlic? 2 tablespoons. These are teaspoons, but I'm kind of doing heap in one, so it's like a tablespoon. Okay. Garlic, and again, I'm going to put my spices in here so that they are getting sauteed in with the oil to bring out the flavors. So the spices in here is, again, we're going to do 1.5 teaspoons of salt. And 1/2 teaspoon of turmeric. And cumin, I'm doing a whole teaspoon of cumin. Okay, give it a stir. Okay, then I want to put in a 1/4 teaspoon of curry powder. And a 1/4 teaspoon is almost nothing, so, but this has spice in it. So this is one of the ingredients that you will adjust according to how spicy you like it. You can also add, if you really like it spicy, of course you can add some cayenne pepper to give it some spice. So mix that up. All right, so I have my ginger, garlic, onion, salt, cumin, turmeric. Okay, so we're going to get the other vegetables cut. We have broccoli, green beans, eggplant. Now I could not find a long eggplant, so I have these eggplants, but I think I just need one. And the broccoli. So I'm going to do the eggplant first. in the last recipe that I made, actually 2 weeks ago when we did the Japanese stir fry, I showed you how you can steam the eggplant to get it soft. And I'm going to do that again. I'm going to set up a steamer. I'm going to I don't want to peel the whole eggplant because I like the look of the skin, but I want to take like every other peel off. And again, if you like, if you really love eggplant and you have more, feel free to use both of them. Again, it's just my husband and I here. I don't have extra people to feed, so I don't want to make too much. So I'm going to just do one eggplant. I'm going to set up my steamer.
Bhavani, you wouldn't use the microwave just to make it soft fast?
I wouldn't, I'm not a big fan on the microwave. So I wouldn't know how to tell you to do that, but if you wanted to do a microwave, if that works for you, you certainly can. The main thing is to make it work for you. So if the microwave is good for you, go ahead. But I set up a steamer. This goes very fast. Can you guys see the steamer? This is, in the pot, I put a little bit of water. I have a insert that will just steam this, and I'll just stick this on this other burner right here. And we'll be adding that in just a little bit to this dish. Okay, it's starting to stick a little bit.
Bhavani, did you say you would take the seeds out of the eggplant? Did you say you would?
Let me just finish what I'm saying, and then I'll take your question. You can add just like a tablespoon's worth of water instead of adding more oil. Anytime you're stir frying and it's starting to stick, that's what you can do, and it works great. Okay, what was your question?
What I wanted to know was, did you take the seeds out of the eggplant? You talked about that.
No, you don't need to take
You don't,
anything
right?
out of the eggplant. This eggplant actually has very few seeds. It's a small eggplant. When the
But you
eggplant,
have done that?
that's when you have a lot of seeds, and that's when sometimes you'll get a bitterness, and that's why many times with the large eggplants, people salt the eggplant first to bring out that bitterness.
Right.
You do that when you're doing baby eggplants or the long Asian eggplants. Those don't even have the seeds.
Right, you don't worry.
That's what the recipe called for, but Whole Foods didn't have it, and I was not about to go to another market for a long eggplant. So this eggplant would do just fine. And all these recipes are flexible. If you couldn't get peas, you could use spinach in this recipe and make a sag paneer instead of a mattar paneer. Everything is flexible. I have a cauliflower outside that I was thinking, oh, cauliflower is great in this vegetable curry too, but I just didn't need it. So with the stems of broccoli, stems used to be my kid's favorite part, but the outer part of the stem is really tough. So you need to take off the outer part of the stem, and then you're left with the center of the stem, and that's really very sweet and soft and delicious. And then you're going to just cut the broccoli into florets. And, I basically want to do it bite size.
Bhavani, can you ask that person, I don't know who it was, to mute? It's interfering with the sound.
If anyone's not muted, please mute your speaker. Thank you. So these are bite-sized, but the stems are a little bit long. So I'm going to just cut the stem off some of these pieces. Okay. I'm going to add a little bit more water anytime it starts sticking. By adding just a tiny bit of water, you're deglazing. It's called deglazing the pan. And it works wonderfully. And I'm going to show you what I have going on right now before I add the other vegetables. So this is the sauteed onions and carrots. Can you see? Okay. So I'm going to add the green beans first because they need a little bit more time than the broccoli. So those are going to go in next. And while those are cooking, the broccoli's ready to go. The eggplant is steaming. I also have some potatoes that I want to add. We talked about 2 potatoes. These also need a little extra time. So when the eggplant's finished, I'm going to steam these. I'm going to cut these into little cubes. Not too little. I'll show you the size. About bite-sized pieces like this. And so 2 potatoes. And you can have red potatoes, white potatoes. If you have a bad spot on it, just cut that spot off. Okay, I leave the skin on my potatoes always. And you can boil the potatoes if you wanted, or you can steam them. Again, I'm going to add just a little bit more water. Okay. Let's see how this eggplant is. No, it needs a little bit more. The rice is ready. I'll show you the rice. See how pretty it is? So what you want to do though with the rice, turn it off. You're going to pick out the piece of cinnamon stick. The cinnamon stick float right to the top. So they're easy to pick off. Same with the cloves. You just pick those right out. Fluff the rice up, just like that. And you can see how, what I was talking about, how they're all individual. They haven't stuck together. They're really just so beautiful. So I'm going to put the cover back on this. I'm going to let some of the steam come out so it doesn't overcook. I'm going to add this eggplant now to the stir fry, and then I'm going to cook the potatoes right in this water here. I'm going to put the potatoes right into this remaining boiling water. And let the potatoes cook up. Honestly, if I would have put the potatoes on already, but I forgot. So, and that happens. You just have to slow things up a little bit. Okay, so the eggplant is in here, looking good. I'm going to add the broccoli in here.
Bhavani, are you boiling the potatoes?
I'm boiling the potatoes, yeah. You can steam them. I'm boiling right now just because I wanted to move it along. But either way, it works fine. We're going to clean this up. And we're going to mix up the coconut milk now with the Thai paste. So this is the Thai paste. And let me find my measuring cup. And my coconut milk. I put where? Here. All right, so we have 1 can of coconut milk. And this is another place where I can actually use my immersion blender to mix things up a little bit better. So I'm going to take my little device now. I'm going to put the immersion blender on the end. Okay, so you can see this now. This is the immersion blender. I'm going to put the, oops, this is onion skin in here. I'm going to put the Thai paste in here. Basically 1 teaspoon or 1 tablespoon. 1 teaspoon. And, you know, again, if you like the coconut, the Indian curry flavor and you like a little kick, you can put a little bit more of this. I have more, so if I want to, I can add more. Okay, I'm gonna put the coconut milk in here. I'm just stirring up the vegetables. I want to show you what I have so far here. You see? Okay, so I have the broccoli in here, the eggplant, all looking good. I'm going to take my immersion blender, go right into this mixing thing and mix this up. So it really mix up well. And this is going to go right into this stir fry here. I'm going to put the rest of this coconut milk in here because I want to get all of the flavor of the Thai curry paste in here. And there's many different Thai curry pastes. You can get the red Thai, this is the red Thai curry paste. You can also get green Thai curry paste. There's other brands of curry paste too. This is not the only one, as I said before. Actually, while I'm here, I'm going to give this back Mattar Pannir another stir, boiling away. Looking really good. Let's see how this potatoes are doing. They have a little ways to go. Okay, so I'm going to take the rest of this coconut. So you're going to use a whole can of coconut milk into this vegetable curry. Just going to wait for the potatoes. And while we're waiting, we are going to chop up the cilantro, also known as fresh coriander. Okay, let me just clean up my mess here a little bit so I have some room. Okay, so I have my fresh cilantro here, fresh coriander, and we're going to be adding this really to all the dishes. Now, if you don't like cilantro, which many people don't, actually, I also want to add, I almost forgot, chickpeas. Chickpeas go into this. And that's a great dish. And again, if you're in a situation where you don't have fresh vegetables, you can make great curries just with the chickpeas and the potatoes, or even just chickpeas, or chana panang. Okay, but I am going to drain the juice from the chickpeas. These are chickpeas, also known as garbanzo beans, and that's going to go right into this dish here. And the potatoes are boiling away. They just have to get soft, and then I'll add them. All right, so for the cilantro, as I was saying, some people don't like cilantro. Cilantro, to some people, it's actually a genetic thing. To some people, it tastes like soap. To me, it's so delicious. So if you don't like cilantro, you can always substitute parsley. It's a different flavor, but it's not going to be one that you don't like. But anyway, this cilantro will go into both of these dishes, unless you want to leave it out. And so to chop, just like I was showing you before, you're going to hold the knife down and just use the tip as the pivot point and just bring the knife up and down, keeping your fingers away from the knife. Okay, so the cilantro, I'm going to add some to the back dish right here, to the Mattar Pannir. I'm going to add some to the curry right here. Now with the saffron rice, I've also done things where I've added raisins to the saffron rice, roasted cashews to the saffron rice. All of that is really delicious as well. And again, when you are doing the cooking and you are the chef, you can add those things. You can play around with it. Still not quite, a little more. And this is just going to cook up, and it's going to get thicker. The sauce, as it cooks, it will thicken up a little bit. So we've pretty much completed everything except we're just waiting for the potatoes. Does anyone have any questions about anything? Anyone need to pour some more wine? Yeah.
I have a question, Bhavani. If you don't like white potatoes, would you substitute sweet potatoes or Japanese yams?
You certainly could. It's a different flavor, and it will make it sweet. You know, the potatoes just give bulk to the dish, but you can certainly leave the potatoes out. You can add another bean as well if you'd like. You know, but you can just leave it out. Put in cauliflower instead. You know, or you could try sweet potatoes too. I've never done the sweet potatoes, but I don't think it would be bad.
Cauliflower is a great idea. Thank you.
Cauliflower is great in this dish. I do cauliflower often.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
If you don't have any fresh parsley or fresh coriander, you don't really want to put dried herbs in. Would you soak them a little or something? Would that make them a little better?
No, they'll get the moisture just from the coconut. So, you know, if dry is all you have, you can do that. But one thing I've done sometimes, because part of adding the chopped cilantro at the end is also a little bright green color. And so you can have some arugula or some mixed salad greens. You can even chop that up and put that in.
Oh, okay. That's good.
A lot of it is also for the color.
If you use dried herbs, Bhavani, aren't they, you use a lot less? Aren't they stronger in the long run, even though the flavor is so different?
For some things, but like dried parsley, it almost has no flavor.
Okay, I've never used it.
What do you think about basil on top?
You could do Thai. You know, Thai does some basil. You know, there's Thai basil is actually a little bit of a different flavor. It's a little bit more lemony. But yeah, you know, I would play with all these different things.
Right. So I just did. I actually had cauliflower. That's what I've been working with because that's what I had in the house, and frozen broccoli. I just tasted my rice. I was playing around and jumped in and had some technical difficulties. I think I made my rice with a little too much ghee. Any recommendations to like take away the heaviness a little bit?
No, I mean, you could actually lay it out on a dish towel that would absorb some of the oil.
Okay.
And then put it back into the pot.
It's not massive, but I just maybe because I don't use it, and I know you tried to cut it, so I'll try that.
Yeah.
Bhavani, I've never used ghee. If I weren't to get ghee, is there something else I would use?
Say that again. If you don't.
I've never cooked with ghee, and I've never bought it. And I'm only one person, so I don't know its shelf life. So if I didn't get ghee, what could I substitute?
Okay, well, I'm not using ghee. I'm using coconut oil. So that's what I recommend, coconut oil.
That's what I will do, because that I have.
Ghee, you can make ghee, you know, just with a little bit of butter, you know, if you wanted to use ghee and you're eating dairy. To make ghee, you just clarify the butter. You just cook the butter and you take that, you skim off the white whey that comes to the top and you keep skimming that off. And you're just cooking it, you're toasting it basically. You cook it, so clarified butter, you're just taking that top part off. For ghee, you're going to cook it a little bit longer, and then you're also going to have some like dark golden pieces at the bottom. And so you're just going to pour it through a fine sieve or something and take out those pieces that are at the bottom so it's completely clear, and it's also toasted. And so you can make ghee just, you know, the amount that you need. You don't have to buy a whole big bunch of it. That's what you wanted to use.
Thanks.
Okay, so these potatoes are ready. So I'm going to drain the potatoes, come over here to my sink. Just pour the potatoes in. And that's it. You know, when you were asking what to do if you have too much oil, you know, like I said, I don't really know what I would add, you know, except for maybe some more rice. But But if you ever add too much salt, a great cooking tip is potatoes. Potatoes absorb so much salt. So if you ever put too much salt into a pot of soup or into a dish like this, add a whole potato and just leave it in there, and it will absorb the salt. And that's a great remedy.
I was hoping you would say that. I was hoping you would say that about the rice.
What's that?
I was hoping you were going to say that about the rice because I knew about that trick.
Yeah, no, it won't work for absorbing the oil.
I'm just a tiny bit behind. Which dishes did you put the cilantro in?
Say that again?
Which dishes did you put the cilantro in?
Cilantro into the matzo paneer and into the matzo paneer and into the curry, not into the saffron rice. So I'm going to get a plate now and just put this all on a plate and show you how beautiful it is. Okay. First, I'm going to take a little rice. I'm first going to do rice. Okay. So, my dears, this is your Indian dinner for tonight. You have your saffron rice. You have your saffron rice. You have your matzo paneer made with tofu instead of cheese, and your coconut curry. Anyone have any questions?
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Bhavani.
You're welcome.
It is beautiful. I'm so excited.
I didn't even have all the spices for the rice, and it's still the best rice I've ever made.
Good. That's what I'm saying. Everything's flexible. You know, when people get too nervous about not having the rice, just think of it as a dance. Just improvise. You know, be creative. You know, just have fun. That's the important thing. Have fun and don't take anything too serious because it's not the best. You'll learn and you'll get the next time. But either way, you know, you put your love into it and you'll be able to taste that. Any questions, anyone?
I have one other question. What brand knife do you use? What do you?
This is a globe knife. One right here. Another one of my favorite knives is a Mac knife. I'll show you that one. This one you can actually order online and it's not very expensive. It's shaped like this, a Mac knife. I also have
Is that MAC or MAC?
MAC, yes. This is another knife that I love. It has a wooden, you know, a little bit of a wooden handle. I don't know the name of it though. I can't help you with that. You know, and then of course you have these Japanese knives that are wonderful. Anyone else? Okay, well then I want to thank you all for joining me. Please let people know about this. I really love inspiring people to cook. I have, you know, my creativity, and I want to share it with all of you. So thanks again for joining, and I'll see you all again next week. Bye.
Thank you, Bhavani.